Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's session. I know we have people coming in, so we are going to wait a couple minutes before we start. I'd like to ask, before I introduce myself and my colleagues, I'd like to ask you to tell us on the chat who you are, where you're joining from, which school do you work at, so that we can have a better understanding of the global audience that we have on the other side of our screens. So, welcome, welcome. Great. Lots of people coming in. Um, let's give it one more minute. Hello, hello. Great. Dubai. Hi, Nafisa. Great. I am joining from Buenos Aires in Argentina, South America. I have my colleagues from the UK,
Hey everyone.
India. Fantastic. Great. So as people come in, I'm going to start because we have a lot of information and we don't want to run short of time. Um, Welcome to today's session. This is brought to you by Best School to Work, which is a program of T4 education. My name is Marin Moret. I am based, as I said, in Buenos Aires. I work at T4. I am head of strategic partnerships. And I also have my colleague Mike joining me this time as well. So, Mike, do you want to say hi?
Hello everybody. Welcome. Lovely to see you from all around the world. Looking forward to a great session.
Fantastic. Mike is joining from the UK, and we also have on the backstage my colleague Daniel that is joining from Nigeria as well. We have this, as you see, global team, which is amazing. And it's lovely to have this global audience as well on the other side. So, welcome and thank you for joining. Just before we start, I just want to say a couple of things. Firstly, this session is being recorded. And we're going to send the recording after the session via email. So in case you need to drop before the end time or someone couldn't join, like you will be able to look at the to watch this on demand. And we're going to send to those of you that are attending here a certification. Sorry, a certificate, and an attendee certificate that you have attended the session in case that's useful for you, for your PD, and so on. So without further ado, we have a presentation that we want to show, and we want to, great. I think we're sharing. Fantastic. Before I start, I want to say this session is interactive and we want to really hear from you and hear from how you feel in your, like working at your schools, in your workplaces. So please feel free to drop questions or comments as we speak. And we are going to pick up on them and it will be lovely to interact that way. So again, welcome to the session. Can you move one slide on, Mike? Today we're going to. This is an overview of our agenda today. This session is going to be 1 hour long. We're going to start by introducing ourselves, which we're doing now, but then trying to unpack a little bit the crisis of that the teaching profession and the education workforce is witnessing and experiencing nowadays, and understand why and the concept of school culture, which will bring us to talk a little bit about Best School to Work, introduce this program, introduce this certification that we have. We are going to, Mike is going to talk a little bit about the trends, the findings, the metrics that we see in strong school cultures of schools that have certified and that work with us. So we'd like to share a little bit about that, what school cultures, strong school cultures look like around the world, based on data and real information that we have. And then we're going to open up the floor for questions. So just as I said, drop your questions on the using the chat box, and we're going to pick up on them, and we're going to be more than happy to reply and interact. So just to give a sense of understanding of who we are, Best School to Work is a program of T4 Education. T4 is a pandemic response platform. We started off in 2021. We were founded by Vika Spota. And we work with schools around the world. And what we do is we facilitate, we surface, we showcase best practices and great things happening in schools around the world in order to show other schools, in order to inform the system, to inform leaders, to inform decision-making processes about the great things that are happening in schools, like in the grassroots, right? So from a bottom-up approach. So we work very closely with schools, with educators. Our programs look at giving voice and amplifying these things that are working out in schools. And we focus on non-academic topics, so which is where we understand the magic is in schools. So for too long, and I'm going to pick up on this later, but for too long, the systems have been looking at metrics, standards, systems, and we understand that we need to go one step further and look at other things and other elements that will make school grades. And we know that this is happening around the world. So again, our programs, for example, our flagship program, we started off T4 with the world's best school prizes, which, by the way, applications are now open. So if you'd like to apply for our prizes, just go and submit an application. We'll be more than happy to read your school story. The world's best school prizes, as the name says, reflects our prizes for schools. And we have 5 different categories. One is community collaboration, environmental action, innovation, overcoming adversity, and supporting healthy lives. And this we love this program because we work with schools, and we see the great things that are happening out there. And because of the prizes, we developed Best School to Work, which we're going to dig into this program later on this presentation. And as you see, I used this photo, this picture, to introduce T4. Here, the guy that you can see on stage is Vikas, our founder. And I wanted to use this picture because it's very illustrative of who we are. And it was taken actually last year at our annual conference that we host every year. Last year it was hosted in Abu Dhabi, in the premises of a fantastic school, Yasmina British Academy of Al Dara Education. That is an education group in the UAE, a very well-known education group in the UAE. So Mike, if you go onto the other screen, you'll see, into the other slide, you'll see. So this is our conference. So what we do with the conference, if you go back, Mike, just a second to the picture, this is who we are. This is our conference. What we use this for is to bring our community together, to bring the schools that we have been working on with, to gather them and to discuss and understand what is going on in the education sector nowadays. So I just wanted to give you a sense of understanding of who we are with that. And having said that, I want to now go into something that you might be experiencing firsthand if you work at schools. As you know, we are facing in the education sector a global crisis in the teaching profession. And I want to show some stats. This is a teacher workforce that is in crisis. And this crisis has to do with the well-being of those that work in education, and how hard retention and recruitment is turning to be in schools, in the education ecosystem, as it were. And so let me show you some stats. So UNESCO, I think it was last year or the year before, launched a report on teachers that said that half of the teachers are leaving the profession, and we will need 44 million teachers to additional teachers to replace those that are leaving in order to reach universal basic education by 2030. So an alarming stat that is showing the number and how serious teacher attrition is currently. Then we also wanted to cite this is Gallup's teacher K-12 workers survey in the US that shows how like almost half of the K-12 workers that were surveyed in the US reported that they feel always or very oftenly burnt out at work. So this shows the magnitude of the well-being crisis that I'm trying to portray. And there's one more, which is this is a teacher well-being index in the UK that shows that surveyed educators working at school, so teaching, non-teaching staff, and said more than half said that they consider their organization's culture a have a negative effect on their well-being. So, having shown this, I don't know how this resonates with you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Having said this, I want to start to describe and unpack this crisis and this issue a little bit more. And I'd like to I'd like to start with well-being, right? So, well-being, as I said, is affecting attrition, so it's pushing teachers and not and educators out of the profession. And as I said, it's affecting retention and recruitment. Well-being, so educators that are unwell, that is impacting their performance, their productivity, their motivation and engagement. And when I speak of well-being, and tell me how you feel when you're unwell at school, but I'm talking about stress, burnout, physical, mental health issues that are pushing just teachers out of the profession. And for those who remain, are really struggling to create thriving learning environments. And instead, their situation is pushing them to create like rigid environments in which it's very difficult to create positive and healthy relationships, not only with the students, but with their colleagues. And speaking of students, research shows, and here I'm citing a very interesting report. We're going to send this to you from the University of Oxford, jointly with the IB, on well-being for school teachers. And it shows, and research shows, how the direct link between educator well-being and student well-being. So when the educator that links and relates with students is not well, the student is not going to be well, whether that's academically or also on a personal level, their own well-being. So this is how important the topic is. And moving, and here I want to show how the well-being is shaped by the working conditions. So this is being a topic that has been very broadly, and there's a lot of development in the industry, in the business, leaving aside the education sector. As you know, companies are very focused on their organizational culture and how the workplace conditions are, because it is very easy to show how this directly affects financial results. So they can see a financial report and say, okay, my employees are happy or not based on how they are performing. In the education sector, and you will know this better than I do, this is more difficult to measure because it's more of a long-term game. But at the same time, it's the link has become very clear as well. And this is what we're looking at with Best School to Work. And of course, that when a teacher or an educator working, not only a teacher, non-teacher staff in a school is working in a positive environment, they will tend to experience less burnout. They will have more time and willingness and and they would like to engage more with their colleagues, with the students, with the parents, with the further community. And of course, are less likely to leave the profession because they are going to be more, they are motivated, right? And here I want to cite the OECD last year. They ran this TALIS survey, which is a survey that is run amongst teachers from OECD countries. And last year, they published the latest results of this survey that was run in 2024. And I just want to show you this interesting finding, which says that working conditions, teachers say that working conditions may influence teachers' career choices even more than salaries. So the working conditions can be as important or even more important than salaries when it comes to choosing their career or where their workplace is. So that's very, I think, very interesting and speaks and helps like show the picture of the situation. And here I want to ask you in one word, if you can tell me, like using the chat box, before I continue, what is it that affects your well-being at work, right? When we talk about working conditions, we talk about things like leadership, like your leaders, your leadership styles, the workload, the environment in which you work, how trustful the atmosphere feels or is, if you have development and growth opportunities, what does your systems and processes look like? I don't know, like even the architecture of your school, the resources, like all those things are making to the working conditions. And I'd love to listen from you. What is it that affects your well-being at school, at schools? If you can drop your answers in the chat, would be amazing to read you. Um, and as we continue, and I want to bring this concept up of school culture. I'm sorry, I'm just saying, I just want to read leadership style, feedback. Absolutely, yes, we're going to get into this. Amazing. So I just want to show how the working conditions and these elements that we are listing and that you are also dropping in the chat are all embedded and are all wrapped in a school's culture, right? So I want to like dig a little bit deeper into the concept of school culture, which is what we measure, we assess with Best School to Work. Mike, if you move into, let me read, sorry, the comments. So not having enough time to do my tasks, yes, definitely. Work environment where school priorities, professional development of teachers, exactly like how expectations are set. I think that's very important. Limited resources and bureaucracy, absolutely. The challenge, the balance, administrative and teaching responsibilities, yes. Okay, so let me, great, thank you for those answers. Mike, if you, great. I want to introduce a concept of school culture. And here I'm going, I highly recommend this read. I've cited two American authors that are Deal and Peterson that wrote a book that already has been edited many times that is called Shaping School Culture. And I've used a definition. So they have developed this concept of school culture like very, very profoundly. And I picked up this definition that they use to describe what school culture looks like. So they say that school culture is the set of unwritten rules, shared values, rituals, stories, and traditions that shape how people act, think, and feel every day. And they even included this quote from another author that says that this is simply about the way we do things around here. So this is school culture, and I wanted to use this picture of a playground and students out there playing and teachers, and just to show you like school culture is something that is very difficult to describe, that you feel when you walk into a school. And most importantly, school culture is easy to see and shows up when, for example, on how people treat one another, so how their relationships are, what is valued at that school, what is rewarded, what is ignored, what is punished. For example, also how safe it feels to speak up, to try and fail, for example. So those are things that are really good indicators of a school culture. So as you see, this has to do a lot with perceptions, but it's also very tangible to measure, which is what we're going to talk about today with Best School to Work. And I picked up this, I selected this quote from these authors, which I think is very like self-explanatory and shows this very well. So it says, trying to change a culture without understanding it is a surefire recipe for stress and ultimate failure. Leaders must look below the surface to formulate an accurate account of what is really going on. And to be effective, school leaders need to read and understand their school and community culture, its past, its present, and its beliefs about the future. So, with this, I want to stress 2 points. The first one is every school has its own culture, every school is unique, and you need to understand what that school culture looks like. And it also evolves and it's built over time. So, there may be new elements coming in that may be shaping that. And it's very important to measure this regularly and really have a good and deep understanding of what this looks like. And then I want to say, like, if you're here, you might have an interest in this. And I know that every school has something to improve. And if you're leaders or workers at school, you might want to improve something. If you say, like, I don't have anything, everything is great at my school, like, well, great. I don't know if what's coming next is going to be as relevant for you. But if you say, like, yes, my school has a lot of things to improve and I want to change a couple of things, and well, this is a place for you. And we are more than happy to show our measurement tool and what we have in order to help improve these things and in order to tackle this crisis and this problem and these issues that schools, workforce are facing nowadays. So let's go into the next slide. We want here to do a culture pulse check. So we're going to put up 2 questions, which we would love you to respond. Daniel, if you can put them up to try to understand how school culture looks like in your school, if this is a concept that is being developed or not. So I think you can see the questions on the screen. If you can take your time to read and vote.
I
And
think the
Mike, I'm
answers
going
here
to
are going to
bring
be
you
very
in.
interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
a
looking
hundred
forward to seeing the
percent.
answers here.
Thank you,
So,
Mike. You're in a better position than I to read this information and see what they will be, what answers will show.
okay, should we give it one more minute, Marin, and let's see. Hopefully,
Yes,
everyone's voted, and then we'll put the results up.
yes, 100%.
Okay, should we do it?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, Daniel, should we show the results? Here we go.
Uh-huh. So first question, do you want to read the questions, Mike?
Yeah, so scale of 1 to 5, how much focus does your school put into its working culture? Okay, so looking at the results here, so generally pretty positive. So 86% say 4 or 5. So you think it's something that the school does focus on, which is good. Our experience is a little bit that this topic hasn't been discussed enough in the kind of when we look at those figures that you shared around well-being and recruitment and retention. Our experience was generally it wasn't something that we saw being focused on. So it's positive to hear that you feel in your schools that that is the case, which is great. Now let's go on to the next one. Okay, a bit more mixed here on a scale of 1 to 5. How strong do you think your school's working culture actually is? So yeah, bit of a mixture of results. So
Yeah,
pretty balanced. Some people say it's really strong. Some people a bit less so. So okay, that's
interesting.
interesting to know. Okay, okay, great. Well, thank you everyone. So hopefully what we're going to discuss next will be of interest. Um,
100%.
okay, should we jump on, Marin?
Yes, yes. So now I'm going to hand into Mike, who's going to just dive a little bit deeper into best school to work and the tool and how this will help you improve your school culture. But I just want to introduce a program, but say by saying that I think that for too long, and you might agree or disagree with this, but for too long, the education sector has been shaped by external reforms, external systems, standards, metrics, and in order to face the issues that we are facing nowadays in the education sector, we need to look at a more in-school approach, which is what Best School to Work is offering. We need to we need to have more human-centered approaches, more things that are more centered in people, right? And this is what we understand is going to move the needle and help improve many things that haven't been tackled by this, like maybe external reforms or ideas or programs. And we understand that the richness lies within its school, right? And so this is how I want to present Best School to Work, right? So as a human-centered response to today's school workforce crisis, and we are introducing a new like paradigm, one that is based on relationships, emotions, values, a shared sense of purpose. So I think this is what Best School to Work is. And so yes, so having said that, Mike, over to you. Can you like show us and talk a little bit more deeper into this program and this topic? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marin. Lovely to see you all today, everybody. So as Marin's kind of outlined, we see challenges around well-being, recruitment, retention, and what we decided to do is actually look at, can we define what workplace culture looks like and a metric which can help schools understand where they are. So we did a lot of research. We've quoted a few of the sources that we've used there and some of the things that we like and look at, and we developed our own framework. So what I'm going to do, I'd love to just introduce you a little bit to how we look at and define working culture. I'll show you a little bit about the program, and then I want to show you a few of the things that we see, some of the data points that we see, and some of the things that come up a lot. Some of them are mentioned in the chat, which is really interesting as well. So, a bit of a combination of things that I'm going to take you through now. So this is what we call our best school to work framework. So we have what we call four pillars: leadership, professional wellness, school environment, collaboration, and underneath that, 15 foundations. And whenever you start looking at culture, there are some obvious places you have to start. Leadership is key. I think it came up in the comments. You always start with, do you know what you're trying to do? Do you have a vision and goal? If you don't have a vision and goal, then you're not going to get anywhere. And importantly, do you have a plan on how you're going to get to that vision and goal? You can have a big, shiny sort of stated aim, but if you don't know how you're going to get there, then that doesn't work as well. So really, if you see the top four topics on this slide, so vision and goals, staff engagement, positive behaviors, and supportive environment. These are for us the real starting building blocks as a leadership team and setting a culture. You have your vision and goals, then you need to get your staff around you buying into that. So how do you do that? Well, you treat everyone as individuals, you work with them, you take feedback, you build, you engage them, you motivate them, you make sure you have an open door, they can come in and give you feedback, they can bounce ideas off it. You then model the behaviors yourself that you want to see and you expect others to develop, and you develop trust that way. And then finally, you have a supportive environment. Is it, if someone's struggling, if someone is having a bad day, are you there to support them as a leadership team and feed that back? And if something goes wrong, are you there to support them as well? So those four for us are really the sort of key starting block pieces. And one of the things Marin mentioned earlier as well, we in our World's Best School Prizes, we see incredible innovation. And one of the things that we saw innovation literally coming from all types of schools. We work with schools that are with lots of resources, that have great resources, great buildings. We also work with schools that have, frankly, no resources. But what they have is they have culture. And when you have trust, when you have belonging, when you have staff that feel they can try and fail, that's when you get innovation. And we have seen that with some incredible schools around the world. But it's on that bedrock of trust and belonging and giving things a go and knowing that they can do that. So that's what drives the innovation side. You then also see PD and feedback and coaching. There's some interesting one. I'll show you some stats on this. So how as an individual do you grow and feel like you're developing as well? So those are the key leadership pieces. Collaboration's quite an obvious one. Sometimes staff collaboration can happen natively and can happen quite organically, but for it to really work well, what we find is as a leadership team, are you thinking about your timetabling? Are you getting opportunities for your heads of years, heads of department to get together, work together, brainstorm? And trying to develop that level of collaboration past your sort of, your once a year get together, your team get togethers. How else are you sort of encouraging collaboration together? One area that surprised me a little bit, but there's quite a bit of research that also shows schools that work with the local community tend to have good working cultures. I think it's one of these things about being outward looking and outward and sort of thoughtful and take feedback that's part of that. So that's an area we look at as well. And then just a couple of final areas, the working environment. That's also like the relationship with parents, those of you who work in schools where maybe you have difficult ones, obviously that can be sapping. Now, schools are in lots of different contexts, but how you build those environments and how leadership teams support staff if you have some of those difficult environments can be important as well. Do you have the resources to do your job? And then when we come into the professional wellness side, staff well-being is a really, really interesting one. I'm going to show you what we see a lot is the link between workload and well-being. And of course, there are many well-being things you can do on top of it, lots of nice activities and things. Fundamentally, we think always starting with the workload side, and that's what we see with our research. We always see well-being markers get difficult when the workload side is a little bit out of control. And of course, contracts and remuneration is a factor, not just how much you get paid on those side, but also do you have solidity in your contract? So lots of research shows that for people to do their best jobs, for people to perform well, you need to feel secure in your professional life as well. So that's something that's really, really important. So this is the framework that we look at with our research. We have a big sort of staff study that covers all of these things. I'm going to give you a quick look at this just to give you an idea. So I'm just going to jump off quickly and show you. Just want to show you quickly what that looks like. So can we see that? You see that? Okay, Marin? Yeah. So this is
Yes.
this is basically this is a demo of just some of the things that we pull out. So what we actually do is we have a scoring system. So for all of these things, we actually get a measurement as a school. So this is an individual school. You get an overall score based on kind of how you're doing in all of these areas. So really, really deep. And if I give you an idea just on like on setting vision and goals, we have questions in here. So basically, does the leader, do your staff think that there's this leadership team has a clearly defined plan on achieving a vision and what that vision is? Does the in the engagement side, do the leadership team do they kind of invite feedback? Do they have an open door? Are they approachable, easy to communicate with? Do they feel like everybody's involved, everybody's out to the side, or do they sort of pick favourites a little bit on those sides? So this basically scoring schemes gives you incredible sort of details on what's strong, what's not. What we're also able to do as well is because this is a program we're doing around the world, we develop benchmarks. So I'll show you there are some trends that we see in schools in general. There's certain areas. Maybe I'll preempt a little bit here. It's probably not a news flash to many of you. Lots of teachers are not super keen on the PD they get. So that's an area that we often see as it's going down. It's not going well. So I'll jump into this next one. But because we're collecting this data all around the world, we're actually able to see kind of how does this compare to other schools? And on this left-hand side, we can actually go in and look at the different types of schools. You can start looking at, okay, is it a private school, a government school, city-based, etc. How do I compare? And what are the sort of trends that I see? So we get incredibly rich data sets that you're able to come through and analyze and look at, and sort of start looking at the different sort of areas. And okay, let's say if it's professional development, how? how much of an issue have I got here? So this chart sort of shows things like what percentage of the staff think that my professional development is really good, what percentage of staff think it's quite poor. So the program gives you incredible depth of just understanding where you are. And when you understand, as Marin mentioned earlier, when you understand where you are, then you can start working on what's the solution and what the action points I need to do. You can also come through and you can start segmenting it by different areas. So it might be, in different parts of your school, different job roles, there's certain levels of satisfaction, more so than others. One interesting trend we do see actually is we do see secondary schools tend to have slightly lower scores than primary, which is interesting. I think generally we're obviously getting into the sort of the grades, the academic side of things, sort of the higher grades, the higher stakes exams, that side. And I think sometimes that pressure points tends to come through a little bit more as well. So that's a trend that we tend to see. So at this point, I'm gonna flip back, and I want to talk you through some of the details that we see. Let me just put this back onto screen share mode, and some of the sort of data points and some of the interesting things we see here. But just to give you an idea of the program, so this part first of all, the aim is to just give you really great feedback on where your school is doing well, where the action points look to be. And we basically work with schools to kind of look at those action points and develop them out and build over time. Culture is something you can improve. Definitely, we see it can improve and it can go backwards quite quickly if it's not something you work on. On a regular basis, but also just to say, as part of the program, we do have a signaling effect. So we think it's important that if you are a good employer and you're someone who's really strong, then you can actually go out to the market and say, "Hey, I'm a best school to work. I'm somebody who take this seriously." So if you reach a standard, we have this certification program where you can go out in your recruitment, but also really importantly, your retention. We think retention is one of the best strategies. Keep your good people at a simple level, and sort of tell that story out there as well. Okay, so what I want to do now is actually I want to just share with you some of the things that we see, some of the top line trends that we see. So first of all, I'm going to share with you these are some of the averages now. So in terms of across all the schools that we work with, um, we these are the average scores. So I think within schools, inclusivity generally, I think when you go into the teaching profession, you don't go into it to single people out. Generally, that's something that's there. So most schools generally feel inclusive, both to their staff and also to their students. Staff collaboration generally, I find teachers, educators find that they work pretty well with their colleagues. Sometimes, as I mentioned before, the real schools that do things well are the ones who really proactively think about their timetabling, and they think about how can I make sure I've got mentoring opportunities, I've got collaboration opportunities for my staff. Timetabling is a challenge. I know that's a real headache for everybody, but the ones that I notice who really get this right, they think about it really closely on that side. We talked about vision and goals. That's you can't go anywhere if you don't have your vision and goals there. I think the interesting areas, where are the areas that tend to come up less positively? Professional development. I saw a comment earlier. Everybody in your career wants to grow and feel like you're growing and developing. We often see staff and educators not happy with their professional development programs. And the biggest feedback we see is too many one size fits all PD, too much top down PD. So people feeling, the same PD be given to someone who's been teaching their class for 30 years as someone who's come out of a graduate school, maybe has 1 year experience, and they're expected to do the same PD. Or maybe you're a primary school teacher and you're doing the same PD as a secondary school teacher. Now, obviously, this is difficult if you're a school leader because there are certain things you need staff to do, maybe tick boxes you have to get, or certain skill sets you need. But generally, what people want we see is I think just getting that balance right. What's the right balance between self-driven, self-chosen PD, top-down PD, also kind of what's the right balance between in-person PD and maybe online self-paced balance. So we've worked with some schools who've really worked to develop that and grow that and change that balance, and that's had a good impact as well. The other area, feedback and coaching. I saw a comment earlier there as well about feedback and coaching. So this is an area that constantly comes up. Getting your feedback process right it's not an easy one. Sometimes we definitely see schools where there's an observation program. And if you get that wrong, sometimes that can feel a bit stressful for staff. So they feel like it's something that's really difficult for them and they're being observed and is that process right? But then if you don't do it, then are you helping them grow and develop and grow there as well? So just trying to get the balance right with your kind of coaching, your appraisal, and also building in mentoring systems, I think is an important one. We have a fantastic program on our YouTube channel actually with a lady called Rosie Neese, who did a fantastic session about feedback and coaching. And I'll definitely go look at that if that's an area that's of interest to you. So you can see these are some of the trends that we see. Now, what I want to bring in a little bit is actually, okay, what about the differences with some of our best schools? So the schools that get platinum in Adidas, how does that vary? So what I've done, I've just done a comparison with kind of the benchmark and then those schools that are the platinum schools. And the platinum schools, what I would say is there are certain things they always excel at consistently. So they always have their vision and goals there. And with vision and goals, it's very easy to have, hey, this is the school vision, but does it act as a lighthouse for you in every day? Do you come back to it? Do you work towards it constantly, or is this something you stick up and say in your marketing, in your things, and don't really refer to, don't build to, don't work to? Just making sure that you're really, really consistent on that, I think, is something that's really, really strong. Um, they also get the inclusivity, the collaboration piece right. That's something that's really, really there. And I think also, especially the supportive environment, just making sure that everybody is there. They know if something's gone wrong, they can rely on their colleagues, they can rely on their leadership team to support them. I think one of the interesting things that we see, and I want to pick up on the point that Marin mentioned here, is how important is pay, the pay side. And in our data, and I'm going to show you a specific example after this, we consistently see if you get the working culture piece right, the pay side, if someone's not being paid as much as they want, is less important. Now, many of you, I'm sure, would have, I remember my university days studying Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Take you back. So Maslow argued that pay and how much you're paid is a demotivating factor. It's not a motivating factor. Our data backs that up. So you can have strong working culture, strong retention, and if you get all that right, then how much you're paid matters less. Now, obviously, everybody has their own levels and where that sits, and obviously, people need to live and all of those things. But generally, that's a trend that we do see backed up through this. If you feel supported, if you feel engaged, you buy into your leadership team, you feel trusted, then that leads to greater retention, it leads to greater satisfaction overall. So as a school leader, that's why we think this is so important. And I just want to give you one example of that. So this is a school. I've just got one example school here, an exceptional school. It's a state school, and I just want to show you getting to know this school, working with this school, incredible leadership. Everybody buys in. Marin's guessing who this is now. Everybody buys in. Everybody is involved. They don't have much money. They do not have much money. Pay is an issue. You see it here, but I can tell you retention, satisfaction at this school was incredible, and it's just was an example for me around this. If you get these things right, then this is something that can work really, really well for you in terms of all the other factors. So I want to just talk about retention. Talk about well-being a little bit. The other thing we see, so very quickly in our data, I'm a bit of a professional data reader, and so I can see quite quickly if there are challenges in schools, if people are not happy because of the working culture, they don't feel supported, they don't feel trust, they don't feel some of these things. What happens is this question will jump around a lot. So basically, we ask people about what are their plans in teaching. So very quickly. This is logical. Okay, I'm not. This is not illogical stuff. You'd expect it, but just I want to show you some data points because the data point shows it. If people are unhappy, then this jumps, and basically, I plan to remain a teacher. That number drops. It goes to 60%. We see that retention issue really, really drop. Those schools that get a working culture right, it increases. It's logical stuff. The other thing, we ask a little bit about a question about retention. I'm just picking one piece out here. We talk about internal promotions and what they're looking for and some of the details here. The other one is we have within this question, we ask about are they looking for promotion opportunities elsewhere? Again, whenever we see the culture not quite fitting, that number jumps. Quite often it will jump over 10% if there are challenges in schools. There's this direct link between retention and working culture that we see. Logical stuff, but it's really kind of quite strong on the data point. So again, look at that. If you retain your best teachers, you can just grow and grow and go all the time. That's the importance of a working culture. The other one that's really interesting for us, and this is where I want to touch on the issue of workload and well-being. So we touch on the issue of workload well-being in a few different ways in our survey. This is one question that we have, which we basically ask, do you regularly feel any of the following are working at your school? Now, sometimes this question scares me a little bit. So this is an average. And okay, the ones at the top, challenged, excited, inspired, fulfilled, that's great. That's really positive. Exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed, 40, 38, 33. It ties quite well with the US study, Marin, that you showed earlier. What we do say though, I have seen sometimes those numbers in the 70s and the 60s. So 70% of staff exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed. And when we look at it, workload is always a tie. So for us, obviously, when we talk about well-being, there are lots of nice things we can do in schools um, that are kind of nice add-ons. So you have like nice events, nice thoughtful gifts, nice thoughtful things you do, yoga classes, all those things. They are great. They're nice add-ons. Whenever we see this chart become alarming, it ties a lot to workload. And so first of all, what we always think is always start with the workload side, and what are we doing around the workload and the management of the workload, and then we take it out and then build on from there. And when we start seeing well-being issues, there are trends that we see constantly coming up, and I'd be interested, everyone, with your thoughts on this. The first one surprises me a little bit, but literally it comes up every time. So whenever we have well-being and stress-related issues, communication comes up all the time, literally all the time. Be interested if everyone else sees this. So what do we see here? The feedback is always everything is last minute. We have too many last minute notices, too many last minute schedule changes, too many last minute requests, too many communication channels. So if you're using lots of digital tools, for example, have you got like I don't know, whichever tools you use, if you've got Microsoft Teams or an admin or WhatsApp, and there's too many tools, too many things going around. We always say to schools, and this is something that we feel maybe is not talked enough about in schools. Do you have a real solid, as a leadership team, communication strategy? Who, what, where, with what channel, both internally with your staff and also externally with your community, your parents as well. That's something that we've worked with some schools. We know some schools have really focused on and worked on. And it's just something, honestly, I can't tell you every time I see stress, I see communication as one of the top factors. Admin burden too high, that won't surprise you, I'm sure. Certainly, one of the things we ask school leaders when we work with them is obviously at school, there are certain things you have to do for the government and you have to do wherever you are in the world, the things that you need to report on, all of those things that you need to do that. Also, you need to collect information about student progress. So there's different ways to do that. The question I always ask school leaders is if you sit and review all of your processes and all of the inputs that you ask your school leaders to do, first question is, do you use all of them at a simple level? Are you collecting information that you're genuinely, when you look at it, you don't use? If the answer is no, and everything you collect is going into the things that you need to personalize learning, to look at progression, all of those things, okay. Secondly, are you doing it effectively? Are you collecting the information in an effective way? Could you rationalize platforms, rationalize the way you do it? Can you just do anything to impact the admin burden on your staff? If you take a bit of a clean sort of piece of paper and look at that and try and reduce that down, that's something that, again, we've worked with some schools who've gone through that process and have found ways to try and rationalize things, look at things on that side as well. Workload, I think this is true in lots of workplaces. This isn't just a thing in the education industry. We see inconsistent workload. So maybe things balance out, people take on more responsibility, and you end up with a quiet and imbalanced workload. That's something that we see comes across maybe by department, maybe by just within individuals, within team. That's something that's there. Cover staff is also something that, again, is a challenge. But I would come back to cover staff, especially becomes a challenge when you have a retention issue. So that's a symptom of a retention issue. Obviously, illness and things like that, of course, you can't play with. But in terms of if you're short in your staff, that's a retention issue that leads into a well-being issue and a workload issue, and is a challenge there as well. So these things are cyclical, but these are trends that we see consistently coming up. So to conclude, and before I bring Marin back in as well. I hope that's given you a kind of good overview of some of the program. From our side on the working culture, there's always the starting blocks of those key fundamentals of leadership. Have you got the building blocks in place? Do you have a clear vision and goals? The other thing I would say is, do you culturally define your culture, what you're looking for? Do you recruit against that? If you know the kind of people, the kind of culture you want, do you recruit against that? Do you identify people specifically to follow in against that? And then those supportive environments, the trust side, does that all follow from there and build out from there? And then building into the workload and the well-being side, do you look at all of those factors on the workload side and try and minimize as best as you can? Of course, schools you need to push, and you need to push standards, and you want to push standards and drive, of course. Alongside that, though, what can you do with regard to these charts to support your staff on the workload side, and then have all of the nice personalized touches and things you can do on the well-being side on top of that as well. So I hope that's given you a great overview of the program. At this point, I'd love to bring Marin back in, Marin, and I think we can pick up some questions.
Sure.
I think we've got some questions in the chat and take it from
Yep.
there.
Let's do that. Thanks, Mike. So here's one question that reads, I think it's about the questionnaire of Best School to Work. So it says,
Yeah.
do you ask these questions in different months of the year or the same months every year? So I'd like, Mike, if you can talk about how
Yeah.
schools and chains of schools as well
Yeah.
do Best School to Work 1 year, or they can do it for many, they just sign up for
Yeah.
many years, and how that works.
Yeah, really good question. Because obviously, I think the
It
feedback
changes.
it will change depending on when you do it in the year. We try to work with schools to position and talk to them about when to do it. We try to encourage schools to do it basically, especially this time of year is really good depending on where you are in the world, not do it at the end of term. And especially if they're doing it, if they do something ongoing, then we want to keep it consistent. You don't want to compare results from the start of term to the end of term and do it that way. But we don't have a kind of specific window. So we work with individual schools to design that as suits them. But we try to recommend the best spots around their calendar.
Fantastic. And Mike, how does it work? I think we haven't shown this, but we do work a lot with, we do internal comparisons, right? So we can work with individual schools, but
Yeah,
it's also very interesting to work with groups of schools. So how does that
yeah,
work? So we can
yeah,
see, we can test, and we can assess the differences within schools in groups. Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit further
Yeah, so
about
we,
that?
we work with groups and systems. So we what we do is we have a setup. I didn't show that setup today, but let's say you're a school group with 10 schools. So as an HQ, we'd work with the individual schools, but as the HQ, you would see the results of the 10 schools so you could compare them. And what we tend to find is really interesting. We tend to see that there are some chain level trends that you see which are consistent, whatever that may be, and then there'll be individual school issues or trends there as well. So we have a kind of view where the chain HQ can see all of their schools together and are able
Mm.
to compare and look at them, and we go through them. And then the individual schools, their head teachers or leadership team will just see their school as it is as well. So we basically got a setup that allows for both, and it's really interesting to see some of the findings that come out sometimes.
Fantastic. And just to add, we have the questionnaire and the system translated to different languages. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's an advantage that I wanted to highlight.
absolutely,
And then,
absolutely.
Mike, I wanted to ask, so I know many schools have their own measurement instruments of culture or the working environment. So they hire, I don't know, in countries like different measurements. So what is it that do you think that sets the school to work apart from other service or mechanisms?
Yeah, so I mean, schools can do obviously anybody can do their own surveys, and lots of schools do. I think obviously we have done a lot of research into various categories and pieces here. Lots of schools that we work with tell us that it's very all-encompassing. So we cover a range of different things, but also I think with the scoring system, you kind of give a tangible feedback on kind of where they sit. So you can ask questions and things like this, but generally the feedback we get, the design of the survey is very all-encompassing. With scoring, you get a really strong feeling on things. The other thing as well, so my background actually is as a professional researcher, and as a professional researcher, what you do is you triangulate topics. So what
Mhm.
we do is, for example, when we look at workload and well-being, we have a range of questions which are designed to complement each other. So you can look at things from different angles and triangulate them. So that's just a little bit of research skill that we bring into this as well, to be able to do that.
Yes, and just to add, I think this is relevant. Coming back to the questionnaire thing, we ask different questions depending on roles, right? So we won't ask
Yes.
a classroom teacher the same
Yes.
question that we ask to administrative staff, and I think that's a relevant point to flag.
Yes.
Mike, I have two more questions. One
Yeah.
is. Here's a question that says, what do the schools do with the information they get from this data, and how do you support them with it?
Yeah.
Particularly interested when it comes to that professional development issue that
Yeah.
you mentioned.
Yeah, good question, Maxine. Thank you. So what we do is we obviously sit down first of all and run through our analysis of all of the findings, the positives, because that's always we should always celebrate things we're doing really well and reinforce
Mhm.
them, and then look at the things that we think need work, need focus. We basically sit down with schools. We recommend they work on action plans and details there. We don't have a dedicated kind of consultancy arm on our side where we come in and do that for you or anything like that side. We kind of identify the challenges. We talk about some of the areas. We have some resources we provide where we've spoken to experts and details and some things. So we have recordings and things that we provide and people on that side that we recommend schools to look at. But the main thing we support with is identifying and spotting the challenges and putting them in context of how we see that across typical other schools. Like how strong is that
Yeah.
as a context? How weak is that as a context? And sort of effectively helping them to identify their priorities to work on. And the key thing then is they go away, build action plans, come back, and then measure again
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. And here's another question that says, how long does a questionnaire take to be answered? What is a good participation per school?
Yeah, so good question. Normally about 12 to 13 minutes time. So if possible, it works really well if you can with your teams, if you've got a PD time, a staff meeting time, and you can put that away, that works really well. You don't have to do that,
Hmm.
but that you can get it sort of done within that time, 12 minutes or so, is possible. Is there, as Marin said, if you've got multilingual teams as well, we do have multiple languages, and it's possible to
Mm,
switch that, so that's there
yeah.
as well. So, and the second question was,
About how long does it take? What is a good participation rate per
oh yeah,
school? So how
so
many answers? So
yeah, we
the
we look for we look for 70% on our side.
yeah,
So as a minimum, because we're putting a certification program in place, so we
yes.
look for 70% as a minimum, and then obviously from there we kind of discuss with you.
Perfect. Mike, just to wrap up, I know we're on time. So one final question and just to open up for
Yeah,
you if you want to make some closing remarks or reflections. So I'd like to ask you about school principals and how challenging is being a principal and open up to an external organization to see. and measure how your leadership is perceived, but how brave that is and how well it speaks about leadership. So coming back to the leadership point that we assess, um, what are your thoughts on that? What have you seen so far? And I think that that's again that speaks really well, right? I've seen this with you about school principals saying, "Okay, let's do this. We are committed to school culture. Let's open up and let's."
Mm.
I'd like to see how people perceive us and how that works. So, what are your thoughts on that? And
Yeah,
just
no,
please give us some final remarks and closing remarks so that we can wrap up.
yeah, it's a really interesting thing. Obviously, school leadership can be quite a lonely role and quite a difficult role, and obviously a very stressful one. Um, Generally, what we see, if working culture is something that you are focused on and want to look at, part of it is about learning and developing and perceptions and growth. And I think generally what we see is not always, but leaders that also can be vulnerable and can take feedback and are open to feedback, and that's part of leadership and part of the structure. So generally, what we see is sometimes people who are really focused on working in their culture are those leaders who can take feedback and do that. Obviously, sometimes that's interesting, but generally the feedback is positive in the sense of if you want to try and improve you have to understand what's working well now and what's not working well. And sometimes, um, you know, you get some interesting feedback with that.
Yeah.
That's the reality. We are very careful. We're very professional with how we handle things around anonymity and the process. So that's an area if anyone wants to learn more about, we can go into. So we handle that very sensitively and carefully to make sure everything is built out as constructively and supportively as possible. But generally, I think it's a great journey for leaders to go on. And generally, those that go on journey, I find generally have quite an open mind and quite
Hmm.
that feedback. They want to take feedback and they want to grow and improve. But obviously, I always take my hat off to school leaders because it's a tough role and a tough
Yeah.
and sometimes a lonely role as well. And we look to obviously support with this feedback.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that, Mike. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this. If you have any feedback or if you want to for us to demo, I don't know, best school to work or ask more questions or dig a little bit deeper into this, just reach out to us. You have our email addresses. On screen, and also you can go to our website t4.education and go inside that into best school to work. And we're here to help. We're here to support, to facilitate, and with love to learn about your school cultures and try to help and support. We love this program, and we'd love to partner up and work with your schools. So, Mike, thank you. Some final words you want to say?
No, thank you, everyone. So just hopefully as well, whatever you'll see you'll agree is that the working culture is something we're trying to put focus on in schools. So from our point of view, if we're to solve some of these well-being, recruitment, retention issues in education, we need to focus on working culture and we need to understand what are the things that we can improve within schools. There are some things that the government's put on you and all these sort of things that are hard to influence, but you can influence the things that happen in the school and there are things you can work on there. And what we hope with this program is we are making that conversation more live and more valid. We're getting more info to share, and we hope that that helps any of you who are passionate about it and want to see the kind of working culture in your schools improve.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, thank you very much and see you on our next webinar. Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you.